Thank you for joining us tonight in the Access Pacific chapter of the Access User Groups. Tonight's presentation by John W Colby, is on preparing your Access database application for deployment. John is going to demo a small tool that he created many years ago. And he thinks that because it probably won't take the full hour, there's an opportunity for us to share our own approaches. I'm out of the business, so I really don't have any deployment practices anymore, but I'm sure that those of you who are actively supporting clients will have other input for that. So before we turn the time over to him, just a quick review. The Access roadmap, the last time I looked at it, about 3 o'clock this afternoon, it's pretty static. And as you know, we're really close to some of the rollout in the Zoom slider is supposed to come out starting this month. Modern forms and reports to work well on large monitors, on large format monitors. The ongoing work to integrate Monaco to improve SQL editor capabilities and modern chart improvements are still on the roadmap, although that's pretty much launched. I keep seeing discussions that Monaco is taking 2 steps forward and 1 step back, but it's generally moving forward. So I think we'll see it. And I see John has rejoined us. So are you able to?
have.
Okay, great. So I'll go through one more slide and then I'll turn the time over to you. We're kind of reaching our summer hiatus for a lot of the chapters. As a matter of fact, there's only 2 scheduled meetings coming up. Access Italia is going to have a presentation on text-to-speech. David, you probably don't want to miss that one, even though it's in Italian. I think Access Lunchtime is planning to take the summer off and start up again in September. Kent, are you taking the summer off, or are you going to have sessions through the summer?
It ain't summer here, George.
Well, I'm sorry, I beg your pardon. Through the months of July.
My toes are cold.
Yeah.
No, I haven't really planned anything yet.
Okay. So you will let us know if something comes up.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You'll be the first to know.
Okay, great.
Well,
so
second.
Do you know does somebody know how to pronounce his last name? Is it Pete Poppy or Pop?
I would expect. Where is he from? America or?
I think he's from England.
It's Pop. No, he's in Northern Virginia.
Northern Virginia?
In that case, it's probably Pop.
Okay, I'm thinking of somebody else then. Okay. Yeah, but he's up next for Access Europe on faking non-normal user interfaces with the normal data. And there's been a couple of discussions on, I think, Microsoft Answers and one other place recently about that topic. So I'm looking forward to seeing what he has to say. Juan's groups are both off until September. Right now, I'm planning to take July and August off unless someone approaches me with a great idea or even a half-baked idea for a presentation. I would love to have presentations, but if I don't have something lined up and everybody else is taking the July and August off, I probably will as well. But we'll see how that goes. So I will stop sharing and turn the time over to John. John Colby is going to talk about a little application he created many years ago to help set up, and at the time, an MDB for deployment. Of course, now it works with ACCDBs as well. I was just telling him before the meeting started, I started working around with it this afternoon. I was able to do the changes on a couple of sample demo databases that I have. And then I thought this would be cool as an add-in. And so I tried to make it work as an add-in and ended up in the soup. So apparently this is not a great idea for an add-in yet. It will take some work. So there's an opportunity for Jeff and Well, Chris or whoever else wants
For
to
me?
chime in. Yeah, to turn this little app into an add-in
Oh, okay.
and make it
Sure.
actually work. Because like I say, my experiment was very bad. But I would like to think it could be a great add-in for someone who's in development, getting ready to deploy an application. So with that kind of wandering introduction, I'll turn the time over to John if you want to go ahead and share your screen.
Okay, well, according to this, I am sharing my screen.
Okay, I'm seeing it now.
I see it.
Okay.
Great. Oh, good. I will mute myself. How do you prefer to take questions or discussion?
I don't care. We're gonna have so much time today. This is a really tiny little app, and so anybody can ask anything anytime they want, as far as I'm concerned.
Okay, great. So I'll mute myself pending that, and I'll watch the chat for questions.
And I will try not to slip down in my chair like I'm a drunk or something when I'm doing my presentation. Okay, so yeah, so C2DB properties. Back in the day, I actually created this. I'm finding code clear back to 1998, 99. So sometime a long, long darn time ago, I wanted to be able to tighten up the security for my clients' applications so that they could not see stuff, the forms and the tables and all that stuff. So we could hide that, and we could hide the special keys and all that nonsense. So anyway, so this application is just two forms. This form is nothing more than let's find um, the application that we want to tighten up. So if you click on this, and there should be a hover thingy as well, if you look at it, click to open a file find dialog. So we're going to click to open a file find dialog, and then we're just going to come in here and pick something, fill in the blanks, ACCDB. Okay, and we're going to select that. So two things to know. I don't know why I did it, but I decided that I would create a database on the fly and create a table out in that database on the fly and link it into this thing on the fly so that when I was done, all of this was being saved out in that back end. So over here, you see this thing, which is nothing more than the name of this plus personal at the end of it. That is that database that I just created. And if you fire this thing up in a place where code can run, as soon as you fire up this form right here, it will create that database. If it doesn't exist, create the table and off you go. Okay, so pretty much point and click. Okay, so that's that. Now, then this should also have a hover. Basically, you just double click in this and it pops up this form. And this is all there is to this little widget. Okay, so what I wanted to be able to do was to be able to pull out the startup form or create a startup form. Now I haven't actually tried to type that in here and see if it's saved back out, but I think it would. But there are the show DB window, the allow full menus, allow special keys, all that kind of stuff, allow the bypass, etc. So if I'm doing development, which I don't do anymore, but if I were, I would say, oh, I don't want them to be able to allow the bypass key. But as a developer, I do. When I go into my app that I'm going to distribute to somebody, I want to be able to bypass the the startup stuff that's happening. I want to be able to allow special keys. I want to be able to break into code, but I do not want my user able to do these things, show the DB window, and so forth. So by clicking these properties and doing a write property, when I close this form down and come back in again, that what it's doing behind the scenes is it's opening that remote database and reading in the properties into this form. And then I'm able to modify the properties and write them back out again, and it's writing them back out into that remote database. So this whole thing is nothing more than, hey, I'm working on this thing, I'm working on this thing, I'm working on this thing, and now I can just double click in here and set and reset those properties, write the properties back out again, close this back down, go back to development. That's all it is. So it's useful for active developers. Back in the day when I was developing, I wanted to do this stuff without having to go in and find all these things, because you can find all these things actually out in Access someplace and set the allow full menus or show startup database window or whatever it is. You can actually do that live out there in Access, but it sure ain't fun poking around trying to find it, especially if you don't do it often. So this tool was just something I wrote that allowed me to do that. So, any questions?
Yeah, I'm just typing one in, but I'll do it now. When you write back to the file, does
Yeah.
it change the last updated date, or do you force it not to?
I don't know.
It's
We
been
can
so
find,
long you can't remember.
yeah, I don't know.
I was trying it out this afternoon. I do not think it changes the last updated date on the database file itself.
I'd be surprised if it didn't.
Me
I-
too.
Yeah,
I
I
would be
can't
surprised if
confirm
it
it,
didn't
but
either. So let's
Yeah.
go in and look
let's
at
go look at one.
Let's
C2DB
do a test.
property. Let me change the show startup here and save it and
Oh,
go
did you
out
not?
and
You didn't
Oh, I
write
take
it
that
back,
back.
Tom.
Yeah.
right here, 9:42 p.m. on 6/5. So that tells me that it just changed
Yeah.
that date modified.
I'm getting out
It
of here.
just did. Okay.
Yeah.
So on the thing, when you were in there, there was an option to say write back, but you didn't choose that. You chose one of the other ones. Do you want to go back? Right. You instead of going write properties, which I expected you to do, that's what I thought you were going to do next. You just said close the door. Presumably, close the door writes them all back before closing, does it?
In fact, I don't think it does. Let's
Because otherwise, you wouldn't have made
close
it.
this thing and come back in here and set this. And instead of, see, the right properties became enabled. So now if I just close this again and I come back in, notice I had clicked this thing, but it didn't save it.
Right.
All right.
So,
So I click it and do a write properties. Now when I stop it and come back in again, that property has been saved.
but the date last updated didn't change.
Well, if you
Oh,
go,
unless you've changed my because it was no, it was to
Yeah,
the second.
that was from like May or something. So maybe it's a different last updated.
So Adrian, I think you're talking about the property in the database, but John's looking at the file.
I am. I thought this was what you were talking about, the date modified of the target database. Um, the target database is the database that I'm setting those properties on. And obviously the date modified is being updated. Now, what was your actual question? Because
Oh,
obviously I
in
didn't.
there you've got a last updated property,
Mhm.
which I
Yeah.
assumed, and you're quite right, Eric. Thank you for that. I assumed would reflect the value, the last updated date on the file, but that was that probably wasn't a very clever assumption, if I'm honest.
Yeah, so it appears that these things are user-defined properties as opposed to these things. So the date created, I can, with code out here in this widget, I can
Uh-huh.
create, in fact, we had a discussion with this over on the board the other day. I can create custom properties with code, and I can do my copyright and all that nonsense, So I'm guessing that this date created and this last updated are really my notes to myself, properties to John Colby that, hey, I created this whole thing on 5/31/2025, and the last time I updated it was 5/31/2025.
The other possibility, John, and only as a possibility because I don't know, is that Access uses that, and it will update that when it does work. Now you're making changes to the properties, but you're not going through the Access application. So I wonder if maybe Access says, "Oh, if when I make a change, every time I make a change, I'll go and update that date, that last updated."
Doesn't,
But
Yeah,
you want to
even
test?
though those are the same property names as the properties that Access creates, it doesn't make sense because client isn't a built-in property, neither is copyright, and
Right.
I'm
neither
not talking about those, Crystal. I'm talking about the two top ones.
Right. Well, if the rest of them are custom properties, then the two top ones probably are
I was going
also.
to say, yeah, Crystal's right
I
here.
wouldn't make that
Date
assumption.
created and last updated are not normal database properties in the database properties collection. Those are on the file as far as I know, but those aren't part of the database, the normal database properties. Like the properties on the left that he has with the check boxes are
built in or expected, because they're not all built in, but they are expected. They're used by other things even when they're not created, because not all of them are created by standard. But
two things. First of all, doesn't MSys objects track creation and modified dates for objects?
It does do that for objects, Eric. I don't think that's what this is, because it's a more global thing. It's a database.
I don't think so either. But the second thing is that I don't think these are necessarily properties so much as options.
And also it says user-defined properties above them.
Two points there.
Yeah.
One, Eric, you make a point that they're properties. They are, but they're also they are options, but they're also properties. They are options stored as database properties. Okay, and as Crystal's right, they are listed as user-defined properties. So I think that rather lends weight to the idea that this is something that John has created at some point in the past and decided, I want to call this date created. I want to call this date updated.
Well, Crystal, okay. several months ago now, you did a presentation on modifying word properties.
Those are different.
Right, yeah, and they work the same way. And I actually have a module to set and create and document access, not only database properties, but properties for any kind of object and access. If you don't send it an object, it does the current database. But if you do send it an object, like a table or a control or field, whatever object, it'll just enumerate them all, and it'll also give you could give it a mask, like a prefix characters, and because I like to name all my custom properties starting with the prefix characters, so when I sort them, I know which ones are mine and which ones aren't.
So that leads me to another question, if I can hijack it for a minute. So given all that, is it possible to use this same tool to create and define other properties other than the ones that are listed here that you would want to apply to a deployment?
Isn't that what John's already done? These user-defined properties.
I'm saying that I'm just saying these are sort of standard database properties, the show or hide the database window and so on. You could create custom properties like well, you've got the copyright, but I'm trying to think of a reasonable example.
Isn't that what those ones already are?
You can create anything as a property and just add it to the database properties bag.
You absolutely can.
Or the form properties or control property type situation.
And you could set this same tool up to customize your.
Yes. However, it's not. So if I'm still sharing my screen, I'm in
That's
code
right.
right now.
Yeah.
Yes.
There's this database properties module over here, which has all of these things. Okay, so these are things that back when I was doing this 25 years ago, I said, oh, I want to be able to bump the version. I wanted to be able to create a version, put it in my database and say, this is version 1.7.9. And then I wanted to be able to bump it and say, change the last part, that a 9 to a 0 and roll it over and all and that kind of crap, you know. So anyway, I
Which could
have,
you, sorry, you could expose that through the same interface though, right?
I absolutely could. I didn't, but I can. So what I'm going to say right now is, first of all, let me go out here. This is my blog. You guys may or may not have been out here, but I've got one for this widget right here, a blog for this, and it doesn't have a heck of a lot in it, but I can and will take this YouTube video once it's up on YouTube, go back in and look at your questions. How does this work? Can you do and so forth, and write it up out here in my blog. That's the point of the blog, you know, is to document my work and let people see how stuff happens, so forth. So this particular one is not very darn long, you know, but and so by the way, these things are um, are ways to get at the book if you want to do that. And this, if you click on it, will actually just download the book right um, into your downloads directory. And this will download the demo database for the book. So there's that. So my point is that I care about this stuff and I will go back out and document it. I think somewhere I'll have to go find it. I actually wrote up a document to document this widget, and it's in a zip file someplace. I pulled this widget out to go look at it a long time ago, and I don't know where the document is. And I'm not going to swear that the document exists, but I think it does.
I have a
So
copy of a Word doc you gave me. Is that the one you're talking about?
probably yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. Was the Word doc anywhere near complete?
It looked pretty complete. It's outdated,
Yeah.
but it's looked pretty complete to
Well,
me.
I'm outdated, so you know.
Well, so am I.
If I can interject,
Sure.
this blog is what introduced me to class programming years ago.
Right.
Well, thank you. And
And
yes, I
it's
started this blog in 2013 as many of us were out on Access D, an email group, and way back when in the late 90s and early 2000s, I actually wrote up a series of emails to that group, to Access D, and each email explained something. And
I
I
dug
took
up a bunch of those, and I never would have gotten any traction at all. I just want to express gratitude. Oh, and while she's on, also, Crystal, your tutorials are what taught me about Access in the first place.
Yeah.
So thank you both for that.
Yeah.
well, from me, you're
I didn't
absolutely
get the
welcome.
question, Eric. What is that?
I said I was thanking John because I just wanted to interject that this blog of his is what taught me where I learned class programming. And I wanted to add, while I was on the topic, that your tutorials were what introduced me to Access in the first place.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah. Yeah. I
Well,
think.
thank you both.
Yeah. So that sort of leads me to a thing that's been a thought that's been percolating around the back of my head all day about this, and that is John's already raised the idea of feedback from this session and maybe other feedback to keep it going. And I would like to kind of formalize that. What I would like to see is a white paper sort of discussion of how do you prepare your work product for release to a group, a client, uh, to, well, group covers both a work group within a company or to just a small group of users. If there's a way to keep that going, and I think we have the tools now with GitHub and the blog to make that easier. I think that would be a really wonderful way to pay back and share the knowledge that we get from each other. Would anybody be interested in participating in something like that? And if so, do you have a way
Yeah.
to do it?
Yeah, I'd love to have a platform to publish on, basically. I would be happy to contribute.
How many of you guys actually use GitHub?
Yeah,
It's been on my to-do list forever.
Mine too.
I set up a site and I know where it is.
So let me give you a 5-minute rundown of what I know about GitHub, and that's all I know about GitHub, okay? I downloaded the Windows app, which is this thing, okay? And I created 3 different repositories, as they're called. I have a C2DB properties repository, a event-driven programming repository, and a LibreOffice book. That's the actual book behind the event-driven programming PDF that you can download for free. Okay, so this thing allows me to dump my book into the PDF, into GitHub, and push it up there and save changes. How do you get back an old version? I don't know. But my assumption was if I ever really needed to, and I haven't so far, I would be able to find somebody out there willing to tell me how to do that. I'm not actually doing coding, branches and merging and all that stuff. You know, I'm not doing that. So I will show you what I do, and then it's kind of cool. I mean, and it's powerful all by itself. So let me show this. We're going to go out to this, and here you have on my local hard drive a directory called GitHub, and inside of that are the 3 repositories. These things are created by GitHub's Windows app when I tell it I want a new repository. And I did so. I said, well, the first one I did was event-driven programming. I said, hey, I'm doing this thing. Let's create a repository for it. And boom, it said, okay, here you go. Here's your event-driven programming repository. It was literally that easy. So then how do I use this thing? Well, I go into my Dropbox. I use Dropbox for this just so I can get it on other devices if I need to. And I say, well, I want to take the book itself and drop it into the books repository. So I literally just drag and drop this thing and I take it over to, where the heck did that thing go? Let's go down here. It's probably not the easiest way to do it, but I go to my GitHub repository and I say, I want to drop this into the book. Okay. And it says replace the file in the destination. Yes, go ahead and do that. Okay. So now I go back to GitHub and I'm in the LibreOffice book repository right now. And it says, hey, you've got one changed file. I don't have to do anything, but if I want to, I can go down here to the bottom and say commit that file and push it out to GitHub. And right now it is in the process of pushing the .dot book, the editor, out to the web, and it's done. And that's it. Okay, so now I say, well, yeah, okay, that's cool. Now what I want to do is go to put that latest properties in there. So I go out here and I go, well, where the heck did I put that properties thingy? It's not in here. This is event driven. So let's go with event driven programming demo database. This is the actual thing that you can download off of GitHub. And I say, I want to take that and put it into the event-driven programming place. And it says, okay, well, let's do that. Now I come back out to GitHub and I say, well, I got to change from that thing over to event-driven programming. And it says, hey, you've got a file that you just dumped in here. Do you want to push it? And I say, yes, commit that thing out to GitHub. And it's done. That's how easy it is. That's all I know how to do. But what I also know how to do, actually, that's not quite all I know how to do. If you go over here and you look at these things, and I'm not real sure. I clicked on it. Yeah, that's a live link to out there in GitHub, and it just downloaded it into my downloads directory and opened it for me. Right?
So this copy now is in GitHub.
This copy was in GitHub. This copy right here that we're looking at, this is my book done in LibreOffice. And so this is my book. And it resides right now, I think it resides in my downloads directory. If I were to go back over here.
Well, I'm seeing there's a URL up there, the HTTPS raw GitHub user content.
Right. And so that is the link that causes the download.
Okay.
Okay. So it's not out there. It's actually, let's go over here. Now let's open a brand new one. No, I can't open a brand new one because of, okay. So, let's go out to my downloads directory. Okay. Where is it here? And, okay, make a liar out of me. 5:15. Well, now we have a new mystery. I'm gonna have to look at what the heck this thing is doing. You could see when I went to it. Hang on a second. I'm gonna close this back down again, come back into the blog, and come back down into this thing, and it's telling me you want to get this, and I'm saying yes. And when I do this, look up at the top of my form, up at the top of my screen. Well, it's pretty darn fast. I don't think this is out there in GitHub. I think this has actually been downloaded already to my drive. I'm going to have to figure out where. It may be, hang on a second. I do all this stuff out of here. So event-driven programming. What is today's date?
The 5th.
This would have been where it goes. I'm going to have to research that, but people have been saying, I'm not getting a link to the book. And I'll click on this thing and my book pops up. I mean, this is the PDF. This is the actual document in LibreOffice. This is the PDF. And when I download it and I go into here, all of the stuff that I just put in with my document is actually live out
John,
here in this.
that file's in your Dropbox. It's in your Dropbox. If you look at the top, there's a URL on that thing.
Oh, yes. Event-driven programming and well, this file is. Now the next question is, let me go back out to here and click this thing and click it.
Yeah, so you've opened it on GitHub. But just in the VBA, just a PDF in your browser. See, notice the.
Oh, okay, yep, I
GitHub.
see that. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I see that.
Yeah, so that has the HTTPS colon.
Right. So you've opened the PDF in your browser, the one that's stored on
Right.
GitHub. But John,
Right.
I noticed.
I don't actually go into the PDF very often, other than to look at it and go, yep, it's matching what I did, you know, so then my workflow is to go in here, open this thing up, which is the actual document. And I will go do something. I'll come in here and I will type some stuff in. And when I'm done typing stuff in, this will be dirty. And I'll say, okay, save that. And then I will say file. Come on, guy, drop down. File, export as PDF and export it. And then that puts it again in my Dropbox event-driven programming directory. It's going to replace this thing and save. And it says it already exists. You want to replace it? Yes. And then I go, well, I just edited this thing. I saved a copy of the PDF out into my Dropbox folder. So now my workflow is I come back out here and I go, this is now very recent. This is what I just saved out here. So let's grab this, drop it into here, which is the GitHub directory. And now I've pushed it out into my local GitHub directory. And now I go back out to GitHub, wherever that is. And it says, oh, hey, guess what? You've got a new version of the PDF out there in your local directory. And I say, okay, yeah, commit it. And I push it out. So now that I have actually seen this, now I got to figure out how to make it actually download to a person's download directory. I thought that's what it was doing. As I said, I'm not a GitHub kind of guy. And my objective is if you click on my link, you get a copy downloaded onto your computer. That's my objective. I don't particularly want you, although it doesn't matter, I guess, if it's a PDF in a browser, you can look at it right out on GitHub and there's no damage done doing that.
So that was actually my next question, John, is the best
Do
way
I
to share
sound
that.
ignorant, by the way? I'm ignorant.
Well, actually, it's a two-part question. One is sharing it, which you just said you prefer to share the link to the PDF rather than have people, I guess, go and log into your GitHub. But is that an option? I don't know enough about GitHub to know if you can just go there and browse and see what John has available or somebody else has
Well,
available.
if somebody will go to my
I was going to say, is it public or private? Because I was kind of looking here, John, and I don't see it.
Yeah, can you post? Or you-
It's JW Colby. Oh, actually, you know what? I lied. I can see it. Let's see. What can I see here? Okay. I guess I have event-driven programming. That's the only one I can see. Here, I'll post a link in the chat.
So the next thing to know is, are you looking at Blogger or are you looking at something called Blogspot?
I'm looking at your GitHub repository account.
Oh,
Your
okay.
JW Colby 54 on GitHub.
Right.
Yeah.
And as far as I know, that is a public repository. I know nothing about GitHub.
Okay, so that's actually the second part of my question, John. Can we contribute here through this?
Oh, okay. I was going to say, yeah. Oh, sorry. Go ahead. There's 4 that are public. You have 4 things that are public, John.
Okay. And what are those 4 things? Just write them off.
Event-driven programming, VBA classes, Pi Empire, and Mono Game First Time Test is the ones that are. Some of those look from 2018 as Pi Empire, and Mono Test is from 2017.
Yeah. Yeah. Some old things that I was trying to figure this stuff out a long time ago and failed. But so what I have now that actually is useful to me and you, I think, is that the GitHub repositories, and I can look out there at them somehow up in here, show and explore and show in a browser. But anyway, so yeah, they're public. I created a private repository for the book, for the actual document that I'm working on. And that's this one right here, LibreOffice, the book.
Yeah,
So
so you would have to share it with the people on
yeah,
GitHub that you want to
and
unlock it to.
and I don't want people, the reason that it's private is that I don't want people going in and editing the book um, until such time as somebody helps me figure out, oh, we're going to check out and check back in, and that side of GitHub. I don't understand that stuff. You know, all I know how to do is get stuff out into my repositories
I
and
found
publish
out
it.
with I've been using GitHub with Access now for about a year.
Mm-hmm.
VB.net and C# before that. And I set up a public account. I had to set up two-factor authentication to make that work.
Yeah,
But you can very tightly control what someone can do on that site.
right.
And if they push something up to it, you don't have to accept it or merge it into the actual system.
And I would love to learn that. However, I'm retired. I'm not actually trying to tightly control my program written in C sharp. There was a day when I would have loved to be able to do that with other developers. Now, is it worth, and I'm asking you this question because I don't know how complicated this stuff is it worth my effort to learn that so that I can allow other people to edit my book directly and post their changes up to it? I'm thinking something along the line of, oh, I'm going to make comments in the
Have
book.
you ever used WinDiff or WinMerge?
No.
Okay. These applications allow you to bring up a window. On one side, it's got the original version. On the other side, it's got
Oh,
the
I
new
have.
version, and it
Yeah.
shows you the differences.
Yeah, I have a long, long time ago. Yeah.
Yeah.
I
I
don't
started
think
Worked
using that
brilliantly.
back when I was.
And you can
Uh,
do that from within the GitHub website as well, too. You can look at the differences between, files of the same, when somebody tries to push it up.
Yeah, but what I've
Right.
seen in GitHub is those files are all text. It really
Right.
doesn't
Right.
support binary.
That's the issue, right?
Because it's meant for source code,
Right.
Right.
So they could only, in your case, in your book, they could only put up the whole book or nothing. So you don't get to see a
Right.
diff. So I don't
Right.
think GitHub would work for
Okay. Well,
a
that
text
answers that
document
question. Yeah.
But
or
couldn't,
for
but,
formatted
All,
document.
but
Yeah.
couldn't somebody take a copy, edit it, put it back, and then John would have the option?
Yeah, but he wouldn't have a diff other than he could pull up both versions and run whatever diff is built
I
into
w-
LibreOffice.
Okay, so yeah, I got it. I'm thinking about a one-page code module or a procedure rather than a 200-page book. That might be a
well,
I mean,
and
if you
for
worked on it as live data
Mhm.
and using I'm using the Joyful service to generate the text files from Access,
right.
that you could work that way. And there is the discussion charts and all that in GitHub.
Right.
But again, I don't think it'd be work as a book. They just don't look that way.
Right. And per George's question, uh, I assume it would work if we used a document opened in whatever that was a .txt file. And so we could edit stuff. We could individually go in and open it up and, add our own piece to it and save it back out on GitHub, but because it's a text file, right?
Correct. But you have no formatting then, so it'd be tough to go as a
But
book. It'd be
No, I'm not talking about a book. I'm talking
Right.
about George was saying, hey, can we create a simple document that is, and I don't know how simple he was talking about, but that allows all of us to contribute to a subject.
you,
You know,
that requires good version control, obviously.
Yeah.
Well,
Which
that's what
GitHub
Git
gives you.
is. that's what
Right.
Git is. Git is version control,
Yeah,
literally.
so, yeah, so I'm sure they're set up to do that. It's just a matter of,
I mean,
So
they
it
got
sounds,
I mean, with
it sounds,
branching and merging and all that stuff, you can bring these different versions together. But again, it's meant for source code.
right.
Well, but it works with
Well,
any text file, really.
Correct.
It'll work with any text-based file, even binary files. You're just looking at like the binary diff in that case, but it'll
right.
still, source control binary files as well.
Yeah, but well, again, each file is a unit. Just the diff is designed for text comparison side by
Right.
side.
Right.
Diff specifically, but there's binary diff tools as well if you do
Correct.
want to look at a binary diff actually, which you sometimes do.
But
So I'm just saying,
So-
you still can use it with binary files. It's just diff doesn't work with non-text files.
I mean, there might be
Right.
an add-on you can get for the WinGIF diff, but again, I couldn't tell you.
So back to George's question / suggestion, if we were to work in on our own computer, open a text document, .txt, that is an actual text document, and type in whatever we're going to type into it and save it back out there again. The next person could come along and open that same text document. Ron's going to have to kind of ramrod the show, explain to us how we would pull it out, and if you want to do diffs and all that kind of stuff. George is the one who had the suggestion for doing this. So, George, what is your concept of this document?
to be honest, it is a thought that occurred to me today, and I haven't thought through all the implications, but I'm working on a small project, and I'll tell you, sharing the editing of like a 3-page Word document, and that works really well in online Word, in SharePoint, in Microsoft 365, because edits are identified by the little squigglies, and you can drop comments and questions and suggestions, and it's a good way to collaborate on editing a document. And so that was in the back of my mind. But again, that's like a very short document. It's something like this where it's a 200-page book. I don't know if you're that big yet, 150-page book. That process would be kind of tedious and kind of risky, because it would be really easy to miss some of those comments or suggestions.
And having learned what I've learned tonight from Ron, I don't think I'm going to make any attempt to allow other people to get in and muck around with my LibreOffice document. That's mine.
No, I'd just let them send you suggestions by email that you can then add to it.
Yeah.
That's a good idea, Ken. But can I just suggest something just to play with? That, John, if you get someone that one of this group or someone else to do some testing with you, so you've got your main book on the thing, get them to make a change, and then see how it appears to you when it comes up to you in GitHub. See if it's something that you're comfortable with, or whether you would not be comfortable and find it easier to work with, as for instance what Kent just suggested, which is to email specific differences. They jump in and say, look, at this point in the book I want it to say such and such. They're two options, but until you've experienced it in a safe environment where it's one of the, someone and you almost know what they're going to suggest in their changes, see how it appears to you. See if you suddenly find, oh, that's a lot easier than I thought, or whatever.
And to be honest, if the problem here is that I'm in the book every day, well, right now, because I'm not working right now. So I'm in the book, and then I'll be out for an hour doing something with my daughter, and then I'll be back in the book, etc. So Having another person jump in and try and edit it and push it back out there or edit it live or whatever they're doing, um, uh, unless you have full-on version control, that doesn't work. They're going to make an edit. I'm going to have my own version sitting out on my computer, which it is sitting on my computer. And when they make their edit, I would just make a change on my side and write it back out there, and it would overwrite whatever they'd done.
I actually was
No,
along,
no, no. It
I was
wouldn't
going
do
to say, I
that.
don't think it works that way. Go ahead, Jeff. Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt.
Sorry, somebody else was talking. I just want to say I can come in.
no, I was going to say, I actually was an editor, a law review editor in law school.
Yeah.
And actually, as John knows, I've edited this book. Editorial comments, the editorial process is very, very difficult and needs to be, GitHub is going to work great with code, okay, but it's not going to work well necessarily that well with a complex document, because there needs to, the editorial process is a give and take between usually an author, a single author, and a single editor.
Right.
And making changes can be everything from formatting and consistent to usage, grammar, diction, clarity, consistent usage, just a variety of a variety of things that we sort of take for granted. But you can't believe, or you wouldn't be able to believe, the amount of fuss that goes into getting footnotes right in published law review articles. It's astonishing. There are style books, and I mean, it makes Talmudic studies look like child's play.
Now that's so.
Yeah.
What you're saying is law reviews are really, really complicated, which I guess that makes good sense.
No, it's
Sure that
it goes more to how many cooks you have in the kitchen.
Yeah.
And making sure the comments, which are going to be, presumably well-intentioned and substantive, meld together requires a consistent style, if you will.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I'm gonna point out that with a book like this, and Eric, you were editing law books, law materials, which was your profession. With this book, it's going to need to be. I think we actually, or John needs two people. He needs an editor who does the tasks that you're describing, but he also needs a content expert. And every book that I've ever participated in had a team of people. The editor, copy reader, and one or more content experts whose sole job was to validate the accuracy of the statements, regardless of the grammar, regardless of the syntax, regardless of anything else. Is this an accurate?
That's entirely correct.
Yeah.
That's
And
entirely
so,
correct.
That's the main reason I don't feel comfortable working on John's book, because I would want to edit it, but I don't want to be a content expert for it, because I'm not. It requires someone who has substantial knowledge of classes.
Well, too, the one of the big challenges one has in writing a technical document, whether it's a law review article or a book on event-driven programming or on the capital asset pricing model in finance, is understanding who your audience is and understanding what it is that they know and what it is that they don't know. And the chief
Aren't we
difficulty,
just discussing about whether or not it's a good idea to use GitHub?
yeah, when it comes back to it, I just don't think GitHub is suited. I think GitHub could be suited for providing comments.
I was just suggesting that John give it a try if he wants to. Otherwise, there's other approaches.
Yeah, I think
Although
we,
I suspect we're a bit off topic at the moment. I don't know if we want to carry on talking about GitHub.
Well, it doesn't really matter.
Original subject.
It's all
Yeah.
interesting.
Yeah, and one last thing about the book itself is that I did 3 or 4 chapters for a couple of different books for ROX, WROX. I did one on VBA way back in 2001 or something like that. And I did another one on SQL, the language, a few years later. And back to the point of the book, I've done that whole thing with a real published book. And one of the reasons that this took me so long to even get started was all of that stuff we've been discussing about editing and all that stuff, you know. And in the end, I'm not trying to sell a book. I'm trying to dump the stuff in my head out into the universe in the form of a PDF or whatever somebody wants to use. Okay, so I have no intention of going to a publisher and saying, hey, would you do all that stuff that we've been discussing with this book? Not going to go there. So.
Anyway, I'm going to suggest, with your permission, George, that we consider now that we're past the point where we need to worry about sharing videos. Be nice to have some other faces.
I'm about ready to turn off the recording, so.
Okay, well, real quick, I just want to say one more quick thing. I know I cut off Eric earlier, but I just want to say about GitHub, maybe there's some confusion, but, GitHub really truly is a full-on source control for, for the web. It's for anything, really. I mean, Git is a tool that was written by Linus Torvald, the guy who wrote Linux. And that was in 2005, and then they made this website based upon it. But, they've been using Git for, Linux and stuff for a long time. So it truly is full-on source code control. I think somebody said it kind of wasn't, but it truly is. And so if, the other thing I might suggest is, if you want to use a format that's like viewable in text differences, you might try RTF or DOC. And actually, maybe even DocX. I don't know if you can tell the differences. I know you'll see some markup in there for the doc. But I mean, for RTF, it's basically text and markup. So if you wanted to look at, have a rich text document, you could, look at the differences between that on GitHub, I believe. So
Does that have an M at the end, Jeff?
Which one?
RTF.
No, .rtf, just .rtf format. I don't know if you're familiar.
No M at the end.
Yeah, nothing.
No RTFM.
No, just RTF. It's like the
Jeff, he's making a joke.
You've got to understand RTFM, Jeff. We're all IT people.
I really don't. What's RTFM?
Really? Oh, read the manual. Literally, that's
I should have stopped recording 2 minutes ago.
Yeah,
just cut it out, George.
Yeah, I'm sorry. Somebody's never told me to RTFM before. My mistake. But rich text format is a format that's very old on Windows. Goes back to at least the early 90s. And
absolutely.
That might work for your situation, John, if you need to use a document format that would have a text difference in it. That was my whole point. That's all I wanted to say. Just throwing that out there.
Yeah. From my point of view, as long as there is a safe, secure version that can't be corrupted, it feels to me like it's a good idea to experiment a little bit with different approaches and see if any of them take off.
Well, and the thing about Git is once you check it in, it's in source control, right? So anytime somebody checks in something on top of it, you can always, even if it gets blown away, you can undo those changes if you want to, right? And it just restores everything back to whatever version you want, really.
Yeah.
And that's why it's good.
A bit like SQL Server log file.
Yeah, something like that. Exactly. If you're tracking all the changes, right?
Actually, it's even nicer than that. If you go the access source or source control system I'm using, they have it on Git. You can download the whole repository and you can submit changes, but you can't actually change the branch on GitHub.
So there's a gatekeeper?
Correct. I mean, when you share a public repository, you can decide read only, allow comments, obviously allow downloads. I mean, in fact, their source control tells you how to create your own version of it. Basically, you create a branch and then you upload to that branch. And it's up to the gatekeepers to merge that branch into the active
main,
into the main, right? I mean, I'm not an expert. I was using for source control, but I did the access login to SQL Server, and I put sample on that, and I created a release. So the release, and I think that's the only way you can do the downloads if you want to do. The release has a zip file of the database sample and the source code. If you want to download it and use Joyful Service to merge it into an Access database, even a zip of a stripped down SQL Server database I'm using to log into. And all that you can do with releases, and you do the same with your book. You can release versions of the book as it's edited. But there's no way, unless you give everybody access to right to the main branch, that they can mess up your book, because they can only look at it.
Yeah,
But they can make.
But even if they did mess up your book, even if they did mess it up, you can check, you can undo all those changes because it's in source control.
Well, and actually, again, they can make, if you give them that much access, but if they can make a branch, it doesn't affect the main tree. And if you want to bring in their changes, that's up to you. But
yep, exactly.
So
and the discussion could be, okay, I think you should do it this way. Plus the fact you could upload code, even if you wanted to, code samples of how to do, in this case, classes.
I must admit, I'm not being experienced with this myself. I've still heard enough about it, and from what you guys have said, to think that it would be a good idea to experiment with it, because it sounds like it's 100% safe. As you've just explained, you could even create a branch, but even if you were to create a branch, you would still have the main trunk. So you've always got the ability to undo changes.
Right.
Until you actually play with it, do this, do that, you don't have as good a feel for it as people like Jeff and Ron who've got experience of using it.
And mine's very rough because I still got an error I'm showing in my local repository saying it's out of date, and I can't find where it's out of date. So
did I mention, Ron, I don't have experience with it myself.
Yeah.
And to be 100%, I don't even have that much experience with it either, honestly. Actually, it's funny because Crystal and I had a call last week and we discussed it a little bit. So it's fresh on my mind.
But again, if you use an Access without something like Joyful Service, you really can't use GitHub because all you got is the MDBs.
No, so
CDVs.
I made a very simple solution. You don't even
that's not that Joyful Service exports everything to text files. So yes, you can use it with GitHub.
Oh yeah, no, I'm just saying without a system like Joyful Service.
Yeah, without.
Right.
Yeah.
That was part of our discussion last week as well. But actually, I made a simple little tool. It's not even a full-on tool. It just creates a template and then unzips the templates to a folder, and then you can just upload all that, and it'll be.
And adding on to what Jeff said about template, because I asked him, I'm like, why are you making an Access database template? Why aren't you using the database? And Jeff, tell him the answer.
I forgot again. What was,
Oh,
sorry, what
well,
was the question?
okay, so the answer is an Access database template. If you rename it the ACCDT, it's to zip.
Oh, it's a
It's
zip.
actually yeah, so now you can finish.
Just
Right,
is
exactly. It also does all the work for you to unpack and repack the database objects, and it gets things like the navpane XML, all the database properties, all that stuff. So one thing it doesn't get is like the system relationships or database diagrams, unfortunately.
Yeah.
Do you not put that in a template?
The template does not get those two items, unfortunately.
Oh, I didn't
there's
realize that.
there's
But I'll
some
tell you
other
what. Let me give you guys a link. I'll give you what I was working on. Actually, I'll just give it to you right here. It's Kent's Access Dialogue project. I put it in the chat just now. You guys can all take a quick look if you want. I've made some more changes here too. I actually got rid of the batch script and I made a dev helper ActDB file in the ActDB folder. And that will basically, anytime you want to, if you've made changes to the file, you go into the dev helper, click the button, it creates the template, unzips everything into all the right directories, and then you can just upload it in GitHub. So it's like one button click basically, and then, go to GitHub and upload it.
Actually, what I found an add-on, you need actually use two of them, but the biggest one is a turtle get.
Oh yeah, I've seen it. I've seen Turtle Get. Yep.
That is really nice because basically it adds a bunch of icons to your Windows Explorer. But basically, you can right click on the folder and say get change, or see the changes, and then upload it to Git from there. And that's
Nice.
all you got to do is type in your commit statement and done.
So if you get for Windows, there's a tool that I use. The one I use, it's Git GUI comes with that tool, the
Right.
Git for Windows. And the Git GUI is like so simple. You can
Yep.
just, hook it up to, you just give it whatever URL you want or whatever, directory you want. That's a source directory. Anytime you want to make a change, you just make changes and it tells you they're changed. It's pretty easy. And it's like, 3 or 4 buttons.
Well,
It's
I
real
think
simple.
John says he's using Git. WinGit he's using. Is that what you're using,
Oh,
John?
WinGit?
That one look kind of slick too. It looks like as soon as you put
Oh, no,
something in
that's the GitHub. He has the GitHub plugin.
okay, because that looks like he just dropped the
That
file
one.
in
Yeah,
that folder
that's
and
the
then uploaded it.
GitHub. That's the GitHub app. And the thing I don't like about this app
Yeah.
is when you create a repository, in your directory, it creates that repository and then a second directory with the same name of the repository, which is crazy. So, sorry. Anyway.
Yeah. So yeah, I'm going to stop the recording here unless somebody else has some final wrap up statements, comments, questions.
No,
We're about ready to call it a video.
you
George.
want out a video? Good Lord.
George, real quick before you do that.
Yes.
I'm still sharing, I think.
Yes.
Notice that I've got 2 redirect notices. And this raw thing here, if I click on this up at the top of my screen, it's actually downloading it into my download directory. This the same way. If I click on this, it's actually downloading it into my download directory. So
that's because your browser doesn't know how to process ActDAs and ActDBs. But if it's a PDF, your browser knows how to handle that, so it just opens it.
well, isn't that annoying? Okay. And so what's the easy answer for allowing somebody to actually download the PDF? Or do we even care? I mean, if you don't have it on your laptop and you're not connected, you can no longer look at the PDF. You can't look at the
Is
book.
there a way you can make a link to do that? Like on the page?
I thought that's what I was doing.
Well,
Is
it like, what's the target attribute for your link? Is it new or is it like window? Let me look here. I'm not even sure this would even do. I'm just wondering, so in the link property, the attributes for the a link on your, this is can we see the source for this? Yeah. You can't. So they don't allow you to edit or can you go, what's advanced? What's advanced say? No, down on the bottom left. Yeah, click that. Try opening a new window. See if that'll do it. No, you know what?
All
is,
that does is pops up a
Yeah.
new tab on your browser.
Yeah, your
And I do
browser.
that a lot of times just so they're not yanked away from.
Let's see. Let me just look here really quick. I bet we can figure this out. Hold on, let's see. Download a PDF instead of open in the browser. Let's see what Google AI says. Well, it's just
Yeah,
saying it's just saying make a normal A link, but this is what opens in your browser.
right.
It says browser settings. You can also configure your browser settings to always download a PDF file rather than open them in the browser. In Chrome, you can
And the problem with that, of course, is all of a sudden my reader has to go do something.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. You don't want that. Right. You really don't want that. You're not going to tell them to go change their browser settings. I mean, I would
Right.
never do that as a user.
Right.
When it opens a PDF, does it not download it first and then give you a window? And from that,
I thought it was, but it's not.
You can say save, and it will save it locally.
Well, and that's a possibility.
Yes. So, okay. In HTML5, there's a new attribute for this in the A link. It's called download. That's all it is. And you give it a file name. So in the A link, when you create the A link in your HTML code, you had the attribute download and you give it a file name parameter, and then it'll download instead of open, it says.
Okay, well, that helps for people that are latest and greatest, I suppose. But you're absolutely right. I forgot about that. If I open this thing now, and this is the PDF, okay? So now there's a thing over here that display the progress of ongoing downloads. You can actually tell the thing, hey, download it for me. Somehow you can do that.
Hang on, click on the download.
You can just
John, click on the download, that one. Click there. Right, and it does.
That's your downloads.
That's the downloads directory.
To the right and down. There's a chevron at the far right, and next to that on the left looks to me like it should be a download. Go straight right from there.
Not in that menu. Not in that menu, John.
Not in that menu. Go straight right. Up.
Yep.
Right there. Try that.
Nope, that's a new folder. Oh, that's save as. It is save as. It is save as.
Which is essentially download.
Yep.
Save as is download.
Yep, that is. It is.
In all that name, you know.
You can also right click anywhere on the document, and there'll be, I think, an option on the menu.
Not
save
sure.
Page as or save page to device.
Yeah, no, save page as is something quite different.
Yeah. I just downloaded it. I just downloaded it from
Firefox. This is Firefox.
This is
you're using Firefox. I use Firefox.
But it's in Chrome. It has one there.
That's Chrome. That's not Firefox. It's got a chuffing great big Google thing at the top.
Right. Exactly. That's what I was looking at.
I just downloaded it from GitHub. No problem.
And did you have to do anything at all to make that happen? Was it one of these little widgets?
Well, I went into
like
J. W Colby and event-driven programming, and you get the list of PDFs and ACCDBs.
Right.
I clicked on the PDF, and it opens in the window. And then there's a download button right next to it. So edit, download. Now that you could edit because it's PDF. Click the download and ended up in my download folder.
Okay.
So download raw file. Actually, it says there's a PDF it opened in the browser, but I have it on my downloads too also.
Well, when I click this thing right here, this opens.
I mean,
and I can.
George, I seriously hope you're not going to post all of this. A lot of waffling by a bunch of old men and women. I include myself. That's not a reflection on anything.
How much is
calling me an old woman? I'm not old.
How much is it worth to you not to have it public?
I'm 37.
Hey, it doesn't fuss me at all.
Yeah.
They're just going to go on there and think, what, 2 hours of how much? Where do we get to the intro? Oh, God, I've got 2 hours in. I'm never getting that back.
Yeah. I've only got one serious edit that I got to look for. The rest of it is all good. But I
No.
think it is time to probably pull the
Okay.
plug here.
Yeah,
Yep, I'm
definitely.
gonna
If you
stop
don't mind.
share.